money from those is Mr. Jet Mikaletos. You can salute Jet. Members of the Revenue Steering Committee that I have just acknowledged, but also let me acknowledge the team that Dr. Randall Carlson leads, that being the team that really makes everything happen. Revenue collection has become a very steady and annual-long process with initiatives and tracking that takes place 365 days a year. Today's results are preliminary, and as per usual, they will be confirmed within 7 days of today's announcement. We would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude and acknowledgement to all taxpayers in South Africa, because without the taxpayers, this wouldn't be possible. Let me just say, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen gathered here, that the program will comprise of a statement by the Minister of Finance that will be followed by comments from the Commissioner of South African Revenue Service. Their statements will be followed by questions from the media, and thereafter a series of one-on-one interviews. But let me tweak this. The one-on-one interviews will be only in the instance where they had been arranged. But ideally, I will appreciate that we give you an exhaustive opportunity to ask your questions here. So whilst I had agreed that we will do one-on-ones, I'm told that my team says to me that anyone that doesn't want to ask their questions here deprives the country of an opportunity to hear the questions that they wanted to ask, and therefore is only interested in their particular a media house or radio stations or channel. Yet if you ask here, the rest of the South African public could hear and the answer that you get given, and they are not deprived of the answer because they don't listen to the particular station or they don't watch the particular TV station that you represent. So let me just say that let's do all of that here, okay? And then we can negotiate if we have to later on one of the other things that we need to do. Let me take this opportunity to invite the Minister to make his comments.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Good day to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for your presence here today. At the outset, let me recognize the Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Sfiso Buthelezi. I do need a transition. So forgive me. The Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, Mr. Tom Moyane, the Director General of the National Treasury, Mr. Lungisa Fuzile, the National Treasury officials here, SARS officials that are present, members of the media. It has been a whirlwind and busy past few days, as you are all aware. We have had to hit the ground running and have already received some briefing, detailed briefing on the preliminary revenue collection figures from Commissioner Moyane and his team. I am humbled at being appointed Minister of Finance, and both the Deputy Minister and I are humbled by the reception we have received from our previous colleagues, the Director General and the Executive Committee of the Department, the SARS Commissioner, as well as the SARS officials with whom we met for about 2 hours this morning. I look forward to working with Commissioner Moyane and the SARS officials going forward. I am sure that I speak on behalf of the Deputy Minister and I when I say we take the responsibility of driving this economy very seriously and with the greatest degree of urgency. Collectively, we can achieve the transformation required in our economy. We are here today to provide the country with the preliminary results of revenue collection for 2016-17 fiscal year. It is important to recall that the printed revenue estimate for 2016-17 announced in February 2016 was 1.175 trillion rand. Based on declining economic outlook in 2016, as detailed in the February 2017 budget documents, this was subsequently revised at the MTBPS to 1.152 trillion rand and further revised downwards at the budget speech this year to 1.144 trillion rand. SARS collects 90% of all government revenue, and hence their achievement that will be announced by the Commissioner today is of national significance. At the outset, I would like to clarify that we will only be covering the issues pertaining to the revenue announcement today. Given the magnitude of the announcement and its importance to South Africa, it is imperative that we focus on the matter at hand. However, I would like to make a few remarks before the Commissioner gives you a more detailed overview. It is important to remember that all South Africans pay tax. Whether they pay tax on their incomes, VAT on goods and services purchased, or corporate tax on the companies they work for, all South Africans contribute towards funding our democracy. South Africans should be proud of their high level of tax compliance. The numbers being reported today bear testimony to the fact that the South African Revenue Service remains an asset of great value to South Africa, with 14,500 employees who are committed to doing their bit in ensuring the fiscal sovereignty for South Africa. SARS has an international stature which is the envy of many, and hence is an asset that we have to cherish and protect. The continued effectiveness of this institution is incumbent on the trust and credibility that it has painstakingly built over many years. I know that many of you are discerning journalists who understand the dynamics of the macroeconomy and the mechanics of the fiscus. As noted in the 2017 national budget speech, the projected rate of economic growth is not sufficient to reduce unemployment or impact significantly on poverty and inequality. It falls well short of our NDP goals. I am of the very firm view that to wage a sustained offensive on unemployment, poverty and inequality, indeed to create the volumes of jobs we need as a country, it is urgent that we return our economy to growing faster, inclusively and on a sustained basis. I am sure that in the coming weeks, months and years, we shall have occasion to reflect a little bit more on this, as these three adjectives are vital and related one to the other. One of them without the other two is neither sufficient nor necessary, and neither are the two without the third, but we need all of them working together in order for us to conquer the triple challenges. Before handing over to Commissioner Moyane, let me briefly touch on some key points. It is very important to note that the revenue collected by SARS as of midnight 31 March 2017 has been done in a current economic growth rate of 0.3% as published by Stats SA. The poor economic conditions clearly play their part in our revenue collection ability. The changes we have noticed in the economy mean shifts in the tax bases for various taxes. Changes in the economy may also lead to changes in the behavior of economic agents and taxpayers. Large shifts are likely to lead to significant changes in the short-run buoyancy ratios of various tax types, which can be estimated once the relevant economic aggregates have been measured. SARS has attained annual tax revenue collection growth rates since the financial crisis of close to 10% per annum on average. This growth far exceeds the tax revenue collection growth rates attained by South Africa's peers and also that of several OECD countries. As government, our focus is now very much on the radical transformation of our economy so that all those who live in South Africa can benefit from that economy. Tough and unpopular choices need to be made to ensure such a vision. The success story of SARS is one we should truly be proud of as a country. As highlighted in the budget speech earlier this year, South Africa has built one of the most effective tax authorities in the developing world. SARS has made huge strides over the past decade in enforcing the law whilst providing assistance to small businesses and individuals. At the same time, it has ensured that many South Africans are encouraged to comply with their tax obligations without being threatened with penalty. I have been informed that due to SARS' incredible collection efforts, National Treasury was spared from going into the market to borrow money in the past few days. I am mindful that we have a corresponding obligation as government to improve the impact of every rand spent and to eliminate waste, inefficiency, and corruption. To the topic at hand, though, despite difficult economic times, our SARS officials were not to be distracted, but focused on the task at hand and were able to induce both individual South Africans as well as corporates to pay their taxes and thus fulfill our obligations to the Republic. SARS has been asked to achieve an ambitious target in such challenging economic times. So if we were to achieve this or get close to it, a heroic effort would have been required. Looking on from outside the financial family previously, I knew that whilst this was a challenging task, it was certainly not insurmountable. Let me reiterate my hope that each and every South African appreciates the importance of the South African Revenue Service and its work. Given the economic situation as highlighted in the budget speech a few weeks ago, and by the Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago recently, South Africa can ill afford to borrow more than we budgeted for. SARS is an absolutely critical fiscal organization in this country, and the Republic needs it to work well. I thank you. I shall now hand over to the Commissioner to take on from where I left. Thank you.
Minister of Finance, Honorable Malusi Gigaba, Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable Sfiso Buthelezi, Director General of the National Treasury, Mr. Lungisa Fuzile, members of the SARS Executive Committee present here this afternoon, senior officials of the SARS Revenue Services, senior officials of the National Treasury, members of the media, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to announce that as at midnight, the 31st of March 2017, SARS has collected 1.144 trillion, in line with the revised estimate as announced by the former Minister of Finance in the February 2017 budget speech. The preliminary results show SARS having exceeded the revised estimate by over 300,000 rands. Much more significant is that for the second year in a row, SARS broke the trillion rand mark. We are also pleased to announce a growth in refunds for the same financial period of 8.6%. That refunds included outstripping revenue growth, which was 7%. This level of precision to achieve revenue estimates have been commented on favorably by the International Monetary Fund and speaks to the sophistication of SARS forecasting methodologies and our ability to step up to the plate in tough times. This achievement reflects on a year-on-year growth of 7%, which is normally achieved in boom times. This is an outstanding achievement, given the 0.3 real growth in GDP for the 2016 announced by Stats South Africa in March 2017. If one looks at the tax to GDP ratio, which is internationally accepted norm to measure the efficiency of a tax administration to extract revenue from the economy, the tax to GDP ratio of 26% maintained by SARS speaks to the remarkable resilience of this organization to extract tax from a stagnating or ailing economy. Let us address ourselves to the tough economic conditions. SARS revenue realization was made even more difficult given significantly declining consumption levels, constrained further by an interest hike cycle and deteriorating business confidence. The declining currency exchange rate provided real challenges to foreign business exposure. As noted in the 2017 national budget speech, the projected rate of economic growth is not sufficient to reduce unemployment or impact significantly on poverty and inequality. It falls short of our National Development Plan goals, in particular in the following areas. Mining continued to underperform. Mining and manufacturing employment declined by over 80,000 jobs in 2016. 2, weak business confidence and low levels of profitability weighed on investment across all sectors. 3, though the policy interest rate was increased by 2 percentage points since 2014, inflation ended the year above the target, with food prices continuing to reflect the impact on agriculture due to drought and poor rainfall. And finally, lower growth in our trading partners in Africa and elsewhere has contributed to sluggish exports earnings. The theme for this year across the whole of SARS was mounting and summiting Mount Everest. We chose this theme cognizant of the fact that we had a stretch target to deal with. The printed estimate for 2016-2017, announced in February 2016, of 1.175 trillion, required a nominal 9.8 revenue growth year on year. At that stage, the GDP growth forecast was anticipated to be 1.2%. Since February 2016, the economic growth continued to decline. The Revenue Analysis Working Committee, in short, ROC, comprising of SARS, the National Treasury, and the Reserve Bank, recommended a downward revision of the revenue target to 1.152 trillion. That was announced at the medium-term budget speech. This was based on an economic growth rate of 0.5%. In its meeting prior to the budget speech in February, the ROC further recommended a downward revision of the revenue target to 1.144 trillion based on economic growth rate of 0.5%. This was a significant revision downward from the printed estimate of 1.175 trillion by 30 billion for the 2016-2017 financial year, according to the 2017 budget, is not about SARS' ability to collect revenue, but is attributable to the following. 1. Customs duties being down by 6.5 billion as a result of contraction in real terms in imports. 2. VAT similarly being dragged down by import VAT collections to an underperformance by 11.3 billion. And finally, personal income tax, for long being the anchor of revenue collection, underperforming by 15.2 billion. The growth of PIT year to date has declined from the levels exceeding 12% to about 9% as a result of lower wage settlements, containment of bonus payments, and job losses. Let me remind all South Africans that in 2009-2010 financial year, we had a 60 billion downward revision as contrasted to the 30 billion that we spoke about. The tax buoyancy is an important indicator as it measures the extent of the tax at which the tax revenue vary with changes in economic growth. South African tax revenue has remained buoyant despite tough economic conditions. The buoyancy for 2016-2017 financial year against that South Africa latest GDP growth figure is 0.9. This is remarkable and close to the long-term average. Let me stress once again that our tax to GDP revenue ratio of 26% is well above South Africa's peers and certainly on par with mid-2000s when South Africa had a strong economic growth aided by higher commodity prices, that which we refer to as the boom period. What are the revenue trends? The revenue collection for 2016-2017 has showed us certain important trends, which are, for the first time, post the financial crisis, the growth rate of personal income tax, for a long time the mainstay of our revenue framework, declined to a single-digit growth. For the financial year under review, personal income tax grew by less than 9%, significantly down from the average of 12%. This is a result of the curtailment of the wage bill through lower wage settlements and low bonuses, as well as significant job losses in the South African economy. 2, the significant decline in trade, especially imports, has devastated impact of trade taxes, the main one being import VAT and customs. Import VAT declined by 1.3% year on year, and customs duties in turn contracted by 1.2%. Thirdly, on the back of a stronger commodity growth, the company income tax improved by 7% year on year. Finally, significantly, dividends grew by whopping 30% year on year, reflecting the forestalling effect of in anticipation of rate hikes. What has been the efforts by our organization, the South African Revenue Services? Today's revenue result is another South African and SARS success story, and I'm proud as the commissioner of this great institution. Whilst marginally exceeding the target, make no mistake that this is still a success story. The revenue collection result is by no means a surprise. South Africa has built one of the most effective tax authorities in the developing world, and SARS has made huge strides over the past decade in ensuring compliance, whether by service, education, and enforcement. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, it would be remiss of me not to sound a word of caution. We are seeing the beginning of a disturbing trend whereby tax compliance levels are beginning to deteriorate. We believe that the continuous negative media coverage and comments by those outside SARS over the past 18 months is having a negative impact on taxpayers and tax morality. With respect to their confidence in the South African tax systems, we cannot afford this. Every decision made by the current leadership draws from the organization's mandate and the legal framework that governs SARS. It is no secret that SARS places tremendous attention on the security of information. The South African Revenue Services Act, our policies and other national legislations mandate our organization to ensure that information is always protected and secured. A large aspect of our mandate necessitates working with sensitive and confidential taxpayer and trader information. This is a responsibility that we take very seriously. This is manifested in strict security controls and protocols. Taxpayer confidence in SARS is mission critical to ensure and encourage good fiscal citizenship. I want to touch on the reported concerns about erosion of integrity at SARS and loss of skills. Media reports stating that, I quote, "The biggest problem we face in South Africa today is an erosion of the integrity of SARS," close quote, have also been hugely problematic to us. We find that suggestion baseless, unfairly subjective, and devoid of the facts. SARS a fully functioning executive committee, albeit with some key vacancies, and the 14,500 committed employees who are doing their bit to ensure we meet our mandate. The loss of skills is certainly not true. Since the 1st of April 2017, 279 employees left the organization through the resignations, retirement, and other forms. While we have recruited at the same period 321 new employees. In particular, in ensuring we have sufficient capacity to deal with the critical issues such as illicit financial flows, base erosion, and pay profit shifting, we have advertised 23 positions. Of these, 9 employees have been appointed, 5 are in the process of being appointed, and 9 will be filled by graduates. In the area of BAPS and illicit financial flows, we are expected to complete 37 audits by the end of this financial year. Incidentally, SARS undertook 31,958 training sessions to upskill our employees. I therefore, as a commissioner of SARS, find the comments extremely regrettable. I once again want to urge those who have concerns to deal with us directly. We are inspired by the key and the words of Aristotle, who said, I quote, "Excellence is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent execution. It represents the wise choices of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny," close quote. Despite the constant barrage of negativity towards our institution by some of the public domains, SARS was still to be able to have a very successful personal income tax season. Let me assure you that all is well within our PIT. The only problems are economic in nature and have resulted in job losses leading to smaller pay-as-you-earn earnings. For the tax season that was closed in 2016, SARS received 5.7 million returns by the close of tax season for non-provisional taxpayers on Friday, the 25th of November, 2016, comprising of the following: 4.16 million submissions by individual tax, 47,000 submissions by trusts, 1.5 million returns for previous year tax from individuals and trusts. The SARS Contact Center handled more than 3.6 million calls. The SARS branch offices assisted more than 5.1 million taxpayers. SARS processed 99.9% of all returns electronically. 92.4% of tax returns were assessed within 3 seconds. 93.28% of refunds were paid to taxpayers within 72 hours. 172,000 taxpayers made use of Help You e-file channel, which is 15% higher than the 2015 financial year. And finally, 44,373 made use of SARS mobile application to submit the 2016 tax returns. What did we do to make things better? Special initiative to collect revenue. Despite the seemingly insurmountable hurdles, what has made me proud of the team was our commitment to achieving our revenue target. Despite these hurdles, we were successful in our efforts. I must say, at times we thought it would not be possible. The revenue outcomes I've announced are a result of SARS becoming more clinical and methodical when it comes to revenue planning. Revenue collection is not seen as a once-off event, but rather an ongoing effort, 365 days a year effort. The challenges we faced in meeting the target forced us at SARS to intensify our revenue efforts and develop innovative approaches, including special revenue initiatives. The tenets of our plan introduced in 2015-2016 financial year continue to bear fruits. These include: 1, managing the overall performance of the special initiative programs. These programs were designed to curtail tax leakages, identify opportunities to close the tax gap, and ensure that all revenues were collected in the correct reporting period. Secondly, the development of extensive business continuity plans and disaster recovery measures. Thirdly, deployment of a senior executive to champion regional steering committees in order to facilitate cross-divisional cooperation, pollination, and optimize workforce planning. But finally, and most importantly, the SARS ESCO team revenue visits to all SARS regional revenue forums during this period, which gave us guidance and provided us with the regional revenue plans and insights as to what is happening within the organization. I want to address the issues of compliance. In executing our mandate, the South African Revenue Services balances 3 levers, which are service, education, and enforcement. As has been the case previously, SARS will continue to focus on all pillars of our compliance, namely registration, filing, declaration payment, in order to reduce the tax gap. Improved compliance will be pursued in a variety of ways, including educational, outreach, and enforcement activities. I would like to address the elephant in the room, the issue of refunds. Let me emphasize that SARS over the past few years has changed the nature of refunds 360 degrees. Gone are the old days of refunds being a manual process taking 180 days to process. However, complaints and frustrations of taxpayers about outstanding refunds, particularly pertaining to value-added tax, have not gone unnoticed. SARS would like to assure taxpayers that is not due to lack of concern, care, or efficacy of SARS. SARS has not changed its approach to refunds. It continues to implement its systems and processes that are tried and tested, which have been in place for several years. SARS does not understand that when a taxpayer is expecting a refund, they certainly do not want to be faced with delays. It is with this in mind that SARS has put in place systems and processes to ensure minimum delays in payments of refunds. This has resulted in 89% of VAT refunds payments, while only 11% of cases are allocated to a detailed audit. As at the 31st of January 2017, SARS paid VAT refunds totaling 154.4 billion versus the same period last year of 142.8 billion, making a 9% increase or 12.6 billion more than the previous years. But it is important to balance this approach with addressing the risk of processing payments that could be a result of fraud as well as insufficient documentation to substantiate such as a refund. Due to an increase in fraud, SARS has enhanced taken a risk-based approach in our business processes. To date, SARS has prevented 23.8 billion in fraudulent refunds from being paid, and hence the additional scrutiny being applied to high-risk cases. On the same breath, we'd like to deal with the investigation of the Office of the Tax Ombud. SARS would like to place on record its full support of the investigation of the Tax Ombud. Given the recent reports about VAT refunds, we are confident that the results of this investigation will provide South African public with the requisite confidence in SARS systems. It is in the interest of SARS and the public to finally find closure and the finality to this issue. SARS and the Office of the Tax Ombudsman convened a collective engagement at executive management level to discuss the existing challenges whereby both parties agreed on regular operational engagement solutions that are now in place. SARS is making a concerted effort to build a collaboration and to mitigate existing challenges experienced through these frequent operational engagement sessions. Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, in conclusion, whilst we are here today to provide detail and context behind the revenue collection results, I want to emphasize that it is important to recognize that SARS does not operate in a vacuum or in isolation of our environment. I must acknowledge that despite the trying times, the 14,500 men and women SARS employees remained focused, committed, and tenacious when it comes to serving our country despite the distractions. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my executive committee, senior managers, and 14,500 men, SARS officials who have contributed significantly to this effort, for this exceptional work they are putting into meeting our commitment to all South Africans. I continue to be humbled by your commitment and energy. Once again, I want to defer to Aristotle, who reminds us that, I quote, "When a team outgrows individual performance and lends team confidence, excellence becomes a reality," close quote. I look forward to many successes with you. Moreover, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to National Treasury and the Reserve Bank teams for all their support and guidance. Last but certainly not the least, thanks to each and every South African who contributed to the tax revenue today. Without you, this target would not have been achieved. Your contribution helps government to create a better South Africa. Indeed, mintiro ya vulavula. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, when the commissioner started, you will have seen a lot of high fives going on up front here. I felt a bit left out.